A Georgia utility has filed to add a $200 hookup fee for those people installing solar arrays on their homes. Panel manufacturers have filed a lawsuit to try and regain or claw back some of the money paid in solar tariffs in recent years. And robots may not only be installing solar panels, but they also are going to be cutting the grass around them. I'm Jay Warmke with Blue Rock Station, and this is the news from the solar industry for the week of October 24th. Okay, so getting into that story about the Georgia utility, Georgia Power Company has filed to receive $200 every time someone hooks up a solar array to the grid. They're also looking to add about $16.29 to the monthly charges of those customers. Now, this comes on the heel of an investigation by SEIA, the Solar Energy Industries Association, that found that this particular utility, Georgia Power Company, has overcharged customers about $1.87 billion over the past 11 years by instituting billing structures that are overly confusing and essentially guide customers into paying more than they might otherwise have paid under other structures. Bifacial solar panel companies such as Astro Energy or Canadian Solar, Jinko Solar, Longi, some of the largest solar companies in the world have filed to get the money back from tariffs that were charged back during the Trump administration. They argue that these tariffs that were imposed were found consistently. They were consistently found illegal by the courts when they were challenged in the courts. And it has cost many, many millions of dollars to the industry, and they'd like their money back. So looking at the history of basically what happened, back in 2018, the Trump administration put in place a 30% tariff on many of the solar panels, including bifacial. Now, the bifacial are the panels that absorb energy not only on the front of the panel, but also on the back. They did file suit in the courts arguing that since there were no domestic manufacturers of bifacial panels, that the tariffs were illegal under the law, and the courts found in their favor in June of 2019. But then the Trump administration ignored the court's findings, reinstated the tariff for bifacial panels. They were taken back to court. The courts once again ruled that these tariffs were illegal. So then in 2020, the Trump administration once again reinstated these tariffs, overruling the courts, which then 1 month later found that the tariffs were illegal once again and overturned them. Then once again, the Trump administration ignored those and imposed the tariffs, which were, again, after a lengthy court process, found to be illegal. Now, when Joe Biden took over as president, they kept these exemptions for bifacial panels. So basically, the argument is these tariffs were illegal in the first place. The administration consistently overruled that, but they did impose the tariffs for periods of time over the last several years, and now they want their money back. We'll see how that works. Solve Energy has announced that it's going to be investing in a company called Swap Robotics, and Swap Robotics has tools that will essentially maintain ground-mounted solar arrays. What they do is they map the site using the robotic lawnmower, and then these are remotely dispatched, so they never have to be mapped a second time, and they do rely on the electricity from the solar array. So an interesting bit of technology where a lot of not only the installation of these panels is moving to a robotic structure, but the ongoing maintenance of them as well. And 318 companies have filed a protest with the ICC, this is the International Code Council, objecting to FEMA's recent application or proposal that would actually, according to studies, add about 30 to 40% to the cost of ground-mounted solar. Now, what FEMA is proposing is that the structure of ground-mounted solar be changed from Category 1, which is essentially what you find in agricultural storage buildings or warehouses, to a Category 4 structure, which is the same type of hardening that's required for nuclear fallout shelters or defense contractors or defense facilities and the utility in general. FEMA is arguing these are utility structures and they're critical to survivability of natural disasters. The industry is arguing that these things are not necessary. In fact, the CEA CEO, Abigail Ross Harper, noted that this overreach is being made in an opaque process without the input of experts from the industry on the economic impacts or the environmental or the electrical reliability or even on climate change. Now, what they are proposing and what these companies are supporting is that there be a compromise where the structure is increased a bit to a Category 2 structure. Voting is going on at this point, and we'll see what the ICC comes back with. And the Department of Energy has announced about $14 million in grants to study some of the impact of solar arrays on wildlife out there as this becomes a bigger and bigger thing. This is called the Deploying Solar and with Wildlife and Ecosystem Service Benefits Program. Funding program, tortured acronym. It will provide funding in about 26 different states. For example, there's $2 million to the Cornell University to study how solar impacts pollinators and insects. Another $2 million to Sandia National Labs to study about how to minimize the death of birds around concentrated solar. Now that's a little different than photovoltaic. These are where they use mirrors to target the sunlight at a receiving station. And apparently bird death is an issue there. There is a $1.3 million to the University of Arkansas to study the impact of vegetation and bird biodiversity around solar arrays, and even a study, there's $1.7 million to the Wildlife Network to study the impact on pronghorn sheep and other mammals that live around large solar arrays. Additionally, there's many millions of dollars to study how this impacts soil. For example, if you're going to be putting it on farmland, does it then have a positive or a negative impact on the soil should that land revert to farming? And that's the news from the solar industry for this week. We'll see you next week.